Manchester United have seemingly chosen Benjamin Šeško over the likes of Ollie Watkins for their main striker target of the summer. They see him as the man to finish off the rejuvenated frontline at Old Trafford alongside Cunha and Mbeumo. But unlike those other two, he's not the Premier League proven player that INEOS and United have seemingly been prioritising. But what is his record like against English clubs? Well, you might not like the answer. However, before Sesko was even a known name outside of Slovenia, Manchester United were already watching him. We've wanted this guy for a long time. I remember being linked to him back under Ollie and then again under Ten Hag, starting back in 2019 when Sesko was still a 16-year-old prospect in Slovenia. That's where United scouts first identified him, recognising his potential before most of Europe caught on. As Laurie Whitwell went on to say, the transfer fee that they were asking for at the time was about €2 million, and they got that from RB Salzburg, whilst United were offering around only €1 million, and so we missed out there. And in fairness, this was a move that worked out for him. It was a deal that was overseen by Christopher Vivell, who at the time was Salzburg's head of scouting, the same Vivell that went on to become Leipzig's technical director and now works under INEOS at Manchester United. And so, straight away, one question I ask is, with Vivell being the one pushing for this move, what's the difference between what Vivell is doing with Sesko and what Ten Hag was seemingly doing? Is this not perhaps Vivell just getting another big move for his star boy? Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad thing, and I don't think it is quite exactly the same as what was going on with Ten Hag, and I'm not implying that Vivell is simply doing Sesko a favour in all of this or anything. I just find it interesting that this is a player that he's now aiming to sign for a third time. It's even more interesting when you consider that INEOS were prioritising Premier League proven players, only to now go after a striker that doesn't play in the league and has a poor record against English opposition, over a striker that has consistently proven to be one of the most influential strikers in the country in Ollie Watkins. He has hit 15 or more Premier League goals in 3 straight seasons. That is the kind of consistency up front that we have been dying for. That's not even considering the assists that he gets as well. The last player to achieve a stat like that for us, I believe, was Cristiano Ronaldo between 2006 and 2009. There will be some of you watching this video that weren't even born then. Wayne Rooney himself hasn't even bagged 15 league goals back to back to back before. Now, does that mean that Watkins is better than Wayne Rooney? No, of course not. But it does mean that he is as Premier League proven as you're gonna get. And this is where my worry with Sesko starts to creep in a little bit. He might be talented. He might have this super world-class high ceiling, but he is completely unproven in the Premier League. If Sesko flops, we might not be able to afford a replacement so soon. At least with Watkins, for example, even if he only gives you 2 or 3 strong seasons, he helps fund his own replacement by, you would imagine, helping keep the team competitive. If Sesko flops, he can't do that, especially when you consider that Leipzig are trying to include a sell-on percentage in the deal, which means that we'd actually receive even less money if he was to flop and we moved him on. But of course, the big question is, will Sesko flop? Well, let's take a look at his history facing Premier League opposition and find out if he is this Premier League proven player that we want. Well, whilst there is upside, the doubts about Sesko's readiness for the Premier League is difficult to ignore. There are quite specific red flags. You see, Sesko has played against English opposition 9 times across all competitions in his career, including UEFA Youth League fixtures. In those 9 games, he has scored 0 goals. Worth mentioning that there was a pre-season friendly, I think a couple of years ago, versus Liverpool, where he did score, but he's had none in an actual competitive game. In fact, his only victory in a competitive game against an English side, I believe, came in a youth match against Derby County's under-19s. And so it doesn't exactly scream Premier League proven there, unfortunately. I went back and watched him last season against Liverpool and Villa in the Champions League, and he wasn't exactly anything that special. I don't think he was the standout player in either games for Leipzig. I quite liked Openda or Haidara instead, even Xavi Simons. But for those that are interested, I did actually make a comp of all of his actions from those 2 games on my Twitter, so you can go check out that if you want. It's at Devil's Dugout. There'll be a link down below. However, it's not all doom and gloom with Sesko, you'll be glad to find out. Because there is undoubtedly a player in there. One that has world-class potential. And so, let's have a look at the data, because theoretically, numbers can't lie, right? Because on the surface, he looks like the perfect modern striker. He's tall, quick, explosive, only just turned 22 years old as well, as opposed to Watkins, who's approaching 30. Furthermore, Sesko averages at 0.53 goals per 90, which puts him in the 75th percentile for forwards. The thing is, though, he's actually overperforming his XG, which is only 0.42 per 90 and a 0.35 non-penalty XG, which can, again, be seen as a bit of a red flag. Or, for the optimists out there, here's an elite finisher. You see, he can spin it both ways, which is the narrative that we shall try and run in order to be a little bit more positive, considering that this guy might be leading our front line next year, because after all, Mbeumo is a vast outperformer of his XG as well, and I'm not complaining there. And one of the reasons I'm not too worried about his overperformance is his shot timing data. You see, Sesko typically shoots within 2 seconds or just over of receiving the ball from a pass. Now that might sound like a throwaway stat, but it's not. The 2 to 3 second window after receiving the ball, I believe, is statistically the most productive time for a striker to get a shot off. Furthermore, in the Premier League, I think the ability to get a shot off fast is key to succeeding. Those who require too much time to set up the ball perfectly for themselves, like Højlund for example, won't succeed to the levels required to win the league. Now, one thing I do absolutely love about Sesko is his aerial presence. You guys will probably know that I'm not usually a fan of the aerial duels won stat, because even if he won a duel and then headed it straight out for a throw-in and lost possession, it would still technically be a duel won despite a low quality touch. And so Sesko winning 57.9% of his aerial duels, being in the 96th percentile, sounds great, but is it? Well, based on just the 2 games against Premier League opposition that I watched, and I know that 2 games is way too small of a sample size, but nonetheless, we're trying to see if he's Premier League proven here after all. Of the 16 duels that he was involved in, Sesko only lost possession 5 times. That means he truly is a presence in an area of the pitch that we are dying to improve in. If you want a guy to attack crosses, which, by the way, Mbeumo ranked 3rd in the league for crosses last season, with Bruno also being 6th, and so that's a good omen. Also, with Sesko, he will win flick-ons when we go long from a goal kick, which we do quite often, but currently when we do it, it just hits the Højlund and we lose possession. Furthermore, with Sesko, he'll help pin centre-backs back, but also, which is going to be key for Amorim's system, is he will run the channel. Because whilst statistically and appearance-based being a target man, he's not limited to just being that. He's powerful, he's quick, and he enjoys running the channels, which in Amorim's system opens up space for the likes of Cunha or Mbeumo to run into centrally. But let's talk about his creativity for a second, shall we? Sesko's expected assisted goals is just 0.07, putting him in the 18th percentile. His key passes are in the 22nd percentile, likewise for passes into the box. And then lastly, as for his shot creating actions, he's in the 30th percentile. Put simply, he does not create a great deal. But I actually think his stats are a little harsh here, if that makes sense. Because based on what I've seen, based on the eye test, he is capable of being used as a man to do a quick 1-2 off of when transitioning up the pitch. What I'm trying to say is I don't think it's a detrimental weakness in his game in the same way that Højlund's hold-up or link-up play is. And so overall in Sesko, you've got a player who I think, if you build transitions around him, he can thrive. He's raw, but he has huge long-term upside if all goes well, and mentality-wise, I do think he's smart. He's spoken in the past about playing for a club like United, but admitted at the time that he should prioritise his development first before making a big move like that. And so the fact that he's open to it now tells me that he backs himself. And that's a good thing, because despite not being this freak of nature in front of goal, this crazy goal-scoring machine like a Victor Gyökeres or an Erling Haaland was in Germany, sometimes a transfer, whilst always being at risk of flopping, can also be the opposite, and we sometimes see a player just absolutely explode. Look at Alexander Isak, for example. He was good at Sociedad, but I don't think anyone would have had him down as a potential best in the world striker now, did they? And so maybe Šeško could do that. Unfortunately, though, that doesn't happen very often with us. I can't lie. But the best thing about this Šeško deal might not even be about bringing him in. It's about what we could be getting rid of. As United are trying to explore a deal in which Leipzig would be open to the inclusion of a player in the transfer, with them having, hold yourselves here, Rasmus Højlund as a dream transfer target. Dream. That is crazy. To be fair, I do think he'd do well for Leipzig and in the Bundesliga especially. But for United, this means that whilst the price that's been set for Šeško is quite high, especially for the risk involved, which we can't afford to risk, unfortunately, it has been lowered ever so slightly compared to earlier in the window, and United may just be able to lower it even more by offloading one of our weakest links in the squad. And so that big risk that I talked about does get lowered ever so slightly. But is he the man? Now, personally, I was all for Ollie Watkins. And I probably still would be for Ollie Watkins, because as much as I would love to build this project, we did finish 15th last year. We need instant improvement. And if this whole project to win the league in the next 3 years is a real thing, Watkins probably helps you do that more guaranteed, because he probably has about 2 to 3 years left at that top level, a level which there's no guarantee Šeško will ever hit. So let me know down below, is he the right man? Is he the one you want? Or should we be looking at that Premier League proven striker like a Watkins or even a Mateta? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell. I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. That would be fantastic. Also, whilst here, you may as well check this video out on your screen right now.